You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
And away we go for the Wednesday edition of Leafs Morning Take. It's Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with you, presented by Betano. How are we feeling on this hump day, Rosie?
What's up, Nicki Minaj? Feeling good, man. Take a little twirl through the standings, which we'll do later, and check in on some scores, and things are all of a sudden looking kind of sexy.
Hey, they're on a bit of a heater, Rosie, and I really felt like last night's game, Tuesday night, was a statement victory for this team. By far their most complete effort of the season, right?
Yeah, in front of the dads at MSG. You know, solid team over there with the Rangers, and yeah, they put it together with their third string goalie, as they like to do apparently, and a convincing win, man. It was pretty good to see. A little bit hairy for a second there in the end of the second, but at the end of the day, they had what it took, that's for sure.
Lots to cover on today's show. We got Darren Dreger coming up in about 10 minutes from now. We're going to get the latest on the Maple Leafs trade front, what happens moving forward. Big news in the NHL last night as well. Craig Berube being canned by the St. Louis Blues 5 years after winning the Stanley Cup with that organization. Just tells you that everybody's got a sort of shelf life in this league, and Craig Berube's time came to an end with the St. Louis Blues last night. To remind all to bring on the team spirit, unleash your inner MVP with the game-changing varsity collection from Nation Gear. Embrace the winning spirit by repping your favorite team with pride. Shop the varsity collection and more at nationgear.ca. I like it. A bit of a different spin on things, eh, Rosie?
I do like that. It's kind of cool looking, man. They got some good ideas over there. Go check it all out. There's lots of gear. Still in time for Christmas. It looks like good stuff to me from the bit that they've sent me. I enjoy it. I'm gonna have to pull some triggers as well on some stuff for the fam.
I think for individuals like you and I, we need a vintage collection where it's like very, very ancient stuff from like the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s. So a vintage collection could be coming soon. I'm just saying that. At the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Don't forget, subscribe, like, leave us a review, whatever to help continue to grow this podcast along. Again, Darren Dreger's coming up in about 5 minutes from now, brought to you by DoorDash. It's time for the appetizer. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off up to $10 in value and zero delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more. When you download the DoorDash app, enter code NATION25. That's code NATION25, uppercase, 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms apply. So what a night on the Garden. I love the ISO footage, by the way, of the fathers yet again. We'll get your thoughts on Paul Marner a bit later on. He's been trending on Twitter for like 3 days now. But points in 11 of 12. Auston Matthews, 2-2. He's an absolute rock star. Mitch Marner was great last night. How about Noah Gregor, top line Noah Gregor, steps up to in place of Matthew Nyes, who, of course, was sick, didn't play. The Leafs go 11-7. Man, that was impressive. Like, the Rangers going into that game had been the talk of the town in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, man, it was nice to do. And, you know, with some adversity, you could say, right? You know, Nyes out. We got our third string Tendy in there. The dad's trip and stuff, maybe some distractions, you could say. But, you know, we talk about Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner, but especially Auston seems to step up and score in bunches, like just gets hotter than a pistol and just piles them in the net. And all of a sudden you look at, you know, his numbers and go, geez, where, you know, a week and a half beforehand, you might be saying, what's going on with this guy, you know? And obviously that's the market he's in, but he definitely scores in that fashion, you know, where he just gets hot and just piles it on like 2-2. Are you kidding me? And just wild like that. And I also noticed, you know, some of the depth guys stepping up, like you say, like Noah Gregor able to step up and make an impact. David Camp, we were only talking about him about a week and a half ago, and you know he's stepping up as well as and contributing on the score sheet. So that goes along with the stuff that he does that doesn't show up on the score sheet. So you know, I hate to be a yo-yo, and I don't know if we have been, but this team tends to do that. The players tend to do that. They come and they go, and maybe it's because they're under the magnifying glass with us a little bit, but
maybe
they're certainly showing some positive signs right now. It looks like they're clicking and firing on all cylinders, and it's a good thing to watch, man, and the fans are definitely happy this morning.
Jekyll and Hyde for sure. Am I the only one that gets a little annoyed, perturbed? I don't know what the proper term would be. that you see efforts like that, and then you see this team lose to like Chicago twice. Like, doesn't it infuriate you a bit more knowing they have it in them to be an elite team like that? Like to go and to MSG, like the Rangers have been buzzing all season long. They've been playing great. They're facing Igor Shesterkin, and then they come out with a first period like that, man, where they blew the roof off the place. Like I've never heard MSG hum the way it did, and it was like a negative hum where people were like, you know, when you get punched in the face, like the initial shock of being punched in the face, like that's how it felt at the Garden, like watching that game last night.
Just stunned, hey? Yeah, it is nice. And why are they like that? They seem to be more inconsistent in that sense than a lot of the teams that I watch, teams I've been part of. It shows an immaturity to me to not really be able to grab that bull by the horns and say, hey, I know what direction this game could go, but we're not going to let that happen. And it's a leadership deal and a maturity deal. And they're still finding their way and figuring that out. You could call them a young team as far as their stars and their best players and the ones that you rely on the most are a little bit on that immature side, I would say. Certainly as far as the experience level of winning at a really high level as well. So I hope that's what they're learning. I hope that's what they're understanding. But yeah, it is frustrating to see them. I mean, we all know. I mean, that's why we rag on them sometimes, is because we know what they're capable of. If they were in a rebuilding situation and, coming up and trying to develop some young guys and they've got a roster full of, what could be prospects and we understand what to expect this year, then you'd be more patient through those growing pains. But they are the team and the time is now. And when you see them have that inconsistency, it is frustrating. And for a team that, if you want to say they, have a chance to win the Stanley Cup or we want to make a deep run, well, then that is inexcusable. And that's not, you're not capable of being that team and going deep in the playoffs. You have to have the ability to at least find something that can garner you a win night in and night out. And like you say, they show up against the Chicago Blackhawks and act like they didn't even know they have a game sometimes. Not going back to rag on that, but yeah, it's nice to see this type of an effort and that they're capable of it. Absolutely. We want to see it, as consistently as possible, as close to night in and night out as they can. And to me, that's maturity.
And the cherry on top for me was just more so Martin Jones, your third string netminder, as you alluded to, making 28 saves in that game. I thought he made some big stops. I don't know about you. I got a bit nervous there in the second period. It was 4-3, almost 4-4, but Jones made some big time stops. And that can't be understated. There's always seems to be a sag with a lot of teams, every team, when you're up 2-3 goals. It happened in the game. And it was like the old adage, like they bent, they didn't break, which is great to see as well. And that's the big story for me. Like, you have Marty Jones, you go into Broadway on the back end of a back-to-back, and you beat Igor Shesterkin and the New York Rangers. I don't care how you did it. They got the job done. The following interview is brought to you by our friends over at Battlegrounds Axe Throwing. Book your holiday party now and snag exclusive Boxing Day and Break Week rates. To find a location and book your event, go to Battlegrounds.com. That's Battlegrounds.com. As we bring in today's guest for his first appearance of the season, it is TSN's Darren Dreger. Dreger, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay, fellas. It's been a busy couple of days. Obviously, there's a lot going on around the National Hockey League, either with Department of Player Safety or firing of coaches. So that's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night.
I hear you. Well, we appreciate you taking some time out of your busy slate to join us today. Why don't we start there? Just your breakdown of the game last night. Really loved what I saw from Martin Jones in a Maple Leafs victory on Broadway.
Yeah, for the most part, I think the Toronto Maple Leafs played well. That was an excellent first period. Third period was outstanding based on the level of response. The second period, not so much. And Martin Jones had to make some key saves. Otherwise, that game was tipping in a hurry, right? You had Blake Wheeler score his second of the night, and that caused the Toronto Maple Leafs some grief. It's a one-goal game going into that third period. And it felt like not only was there a momentum shift, but maybe now the New York Rangers were going to take over the game, and Toronto didn't let that happen in that third period. Auston Matthews, guys, as we've seen it in the past, is playing at a higher level again. And he had more help, I would say, last night than he did against the New York Islanders. And then you look back to the weekend game against the Nashville Predators, and that might have been Toronto's best all-around game, right? Everybody was on board Saturday against the Preds in that win. So there's lots of reasons to be optimistic based on how individual players are playing, but also the reason now fans can appreciate why Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs did their level best to keep Martin Jones in the mix, because if you don't have a quality third goaltender in today's NHL, inevitably you're going to hit a snag.
Well, that's exactly it. And I don't think it's getting enough play in this market. The vital nature of picking up a veteran like Martin Jones, the thing they did with the signing bonus structure and all that stuff to make him stay with the roster too, I think was big. And that's the reason right there why they brought him in. Even another guy like Noah Gregor, like, for all the ridicule that's been placed in this market, sometimes rightfully so, some of the pickups have actually worked out. Like Noah Gregor's been a great story too, eh?
It really has been. And, that's no disrespect pointed towards Sam Lafferty, but when Sam Lafferty came over in a trade to the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think most of us thought, okay, geez, this guy's going to be a perfect fit. He's got speed. He plays with a little bite. He's going to be a real nice complement to their top nine. And for whatever reason, Lafferty just couldn't find it. He just couldn't kind of get into a groove in Toronto. I'm seeing a little bit of that in Tyler Bertuzzi, although last night I thought Bertuzzi was pretty effective. So we'll see. In Noah Gregor, how can you go wrong? The man can flat out fly. And when you're a cap team like the Maple Leafs are, I think honestly, fellas, that's what we're going to have to look for the foreseeable future in Toronto. Yeah, the cap is going up $4.5 million next year, but guess who's getting that? William Nylander. That's who's eating up the 4.5. So your fourth line guys, and maybe drifting up into your third line, they are going to have to be entry level, if not certainly lower level, affordable pieces. And when you can get Noah Gregor on the deal that he's on, it's a can't miss. And good on him. He's got some hockey smarts that maybe I wasn't as in tune with. And I was a bit surprised. So we find out late that Matthew Nyes isn't playing. They don't dress Reeves, an opt to go 11-7. So they bring in Max Lajoie. I actually thought that Yarncroc would be the player that would get pushed up, into the top mix. And instead they put Noah Gregor up there. And I think that is just recognition of the way he's played, not just in the last couple of games, but overall.
For sure. And like you say, the scouting staff and the backroom staff's going to have to do some digging like that. They find a guy like him on a PTO that everyone else missed, and he comes in and makes a serious impact, is what they're going to need to be relying on down the future. And, you go back a couple of weeks, Drags, and people are crying out for a trade and they want it now. And, the teams, they lose to Chicago and there's a little struggle here. And now maybe that'll probably peter out. But in reality, where you live, do you see anything on that market changing, or is there any press for anything, or do you think this, if any changes get made to this, especially the back end, you think that's going to be more towards the trade deadline?
It's starting to feel that way, Rosie. And look, one thing, let's just qualify this. Brad Treliving is in on every trade conversation, whether he can afford the pieces or not. He just likes to be involved. He doesn't want to miss on anything, or at least not have a conversation about players that could make a difference. And that's been the case on all of the available defensemen that we've talked about. But I think Craig Conroy and the Calgary Flames, as an example, are being smart in this process as well. Now, you've got Chris Tanev, who would be a real nice fit in Toronto. He's hurt. It looks day-to-day, but, that kind of slows the roll of the Calgary Flames a little bit. And in fairness, Conroy recognizes that he's got commodities there, right? He moves Zadorov for a third and a fifth, and he took a little bit of heat in the market, but he knew that he needed to move one of those pieces. And so he moves the guy that really didn't want to be there anyway and gets, I think, fair value in return. Well, how do we know what the market is for Chris Tanev? Toronto thinks that it would be at least a second-round draft pick. Toronto doesn't have a second-round pick. So then if you're Conroy, you're likely looking for Toronto's first, because chances are it's going to be a late first-round draft pick, which is kind of in that late first, early second. You can cut it both ways. There is no rush in Calgary to get that done. Likewise with Noah Hanifin. Aside from the fact that March 8th, fellas, it's not that far away. And you also don't want to get caught holding the bag here. It's good now because the Flames are more or less trending upward. They're staying in that wild card mix in the Western Conference. So competitively speaking, the owner is happy, but management can see what the timeline is. So I wouldn't say that Toronto is out of it, but I think that Treliving just recognizes, if he's going to make an upgrade, he's going to have to be patient and wait for somebody to come to him too.
So, Dregs, yeah, you're so right. And I think the reality is, they love Chris Tanev, but as reality found out with Nikita Zadorov, there's other teams who love these players too. And I'm
Yeah.
just spitballing. A name that keeps coming to my mind is the guy who actually pumped the wheels off Nicky Cousins the other day, Eric Goodbranson. 2 years left in his deal at 4. Brad Treliving, of course, knows him from his time in Calgary. Like, is that the sort of outside the box approach thinking that we should get ready for when it comes to the Maple Leafs and their quest to add on the back end? Like, I know Goodbranson probably fits in a 5-6 role, but like in general, they're looking to bolster that blue line, right?
Yeah, you know what, Nick? I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I haven't heard that name, but we do know that the Columbus Blue Jackets are interested in doing something, and we've heard the names, the consistent ones like Andrew Peak or Boquist. Those names have been out there. Goodbranson is the type of player that Brad Treliving absolutely likes. No different than Rick Tocchet and the Vancouver Canucks. They wanted to bolster their blue line in Vancouver, but they had something specific in mind, and it wasn't a right shot guy. They would have preferred Chris Tanev, to be frank, in Vancouver. If they couldn't get that, then make sure we get bigger and we get more physical. So they get that in Zadorov, and you'd get that in Goodbranson as well. I don't think it's just one piece in Toronto, and I think you guys would agree with that. When I look at that blue line, aside from Morgan Riley, who's playing lights out right now, it feels like that blue line needs some serious attention, if not an overhaul to compete with the best of the best. And that's kind of what we think Toronto is. Like the Toronto Maple Leafs, when they play the way they did Saturday, okay, they didn't let that one slip away at MSG last night. Played pretty well against the New York Islanders. They're still a top contending team, but maybe it isn't one player. And that's why, look, I don't think this got enough play. There was a good amount of discussion between Calgary and Toronto on both those guys, on Zadorov and Chris Tanev. Well, why couldn't you do the same thing with the Philadelphia Flyers, with Nick Seeler and Sean Walker? Now, you're going to have to give up a heck of a lot. Like Philadelphia loves Sean Walker. John Tortorella loves Sean Walker. But maybe they get the best of both worlds in Philly. They trade him. He's a rental in Toronto, and then maybe they re-sign him in the offseason. But I guess to illustrate my point, what I'm saying is if Goodbranson is a fit, okay, he's a third pairing guy, as you mentioned, Nick. It feels like you still have to add something else to that blue line.
Yeah, and of course they got the flexibility. If you keep winning games and you feel really damn good about life, but you mentioned the deadline is coming quickly. You know, another name that really intrigues me that's just out there that nobody really talks about, and the team's off to like a so-so start, is Brett Pesce in Carolina, Dregs. Like they have just had a really, really bizarre start defensively. Kochekov's doing the flying poke check against Brady Tkachuk. That was something else. But do you get the sense that Pesce's going to be more of like an own rental type situation because we expect the Canes to be a legit contender this season?
Yeah, it feels that way now. But one thing that I know of Tom Dunn and an ownership of the Carolina Hurricanes, they don't like seeing assets just walk out for free. This guy's a real brutal negotiator. And that's why Brett Pesce hasn't signed an extension in Carolina. It's a bit of a head scratcher for me that it's taken this long. And, I haven't checked in this week, but all indications up until last week were that they're a mile apart in terms of that discussion. So unlikely they're able to close that gap unless somebody bends. I don't think it's going to be the player side, so then it has to be Carolina. So then you have to really weigh your options. It's a dangerous game when you let a player of that magnitude walk or use them as an own rental, unless things are going so well where you just can't envision your blue line taking a hit like that. They're not playing that great right now, though, right? And you've got Brind'Amour and company who aren't satisfied with the way things have gone. Kochetkov has been good. So maybe the stability of their goaltending, which has been all over the place because of injury, will kind of get them through a bit of a stale patch here. But there's no doubt that teams call on Brett Pesce, as they should. And those calls are going to intensify as we get into the new year.
Speaking of calls, Dregs, we look and see that Craig Berube has been fired in St. Louis just 4 or 5 years after winning them the Stanley Cup. How long do you think he's going to last on the market? And I mean, I know the Leafs are going through a solid patch right now and people are happy, but with the yo-yo effect in that market, do you think anyone would want to see him replace Sheldon Keefe at any point in time?
Well, I don't know that they'll talk about it in Toronto because there isn't a reason to at this point, but it depends, Jay, on when are we talking here? I had a brief exchange with Berube this morning, and no different than any other coach that gets let go. they're deeply disappointed, and he wants to step away to some degree. Maybe there's a bit of relief because you can feel it coming, right? I mean, he's an experienced guy, probably has had more than his share of conversations that weren't entirely pleasant with General Manager Doug Armstrong about how the team was playing, what he should be doing, what he could be doing. And then you get the coach who says, well, we need another defenseman. We need a penalty killer up front. We need a guy with some grit up front. And you end up in that sort of a world. But as I reported on Insider Trading yesterday, prior to that game and that loss, it had the feel that change was imminent, absolutely imminent. You guys watch St. Louis. Tell me if they play the way that they have played in past years. You know, that heavy, hard checking game. No, they haven't been playing that way consistently this year. So the players weren't buying in, or they don't have the right players who are going to commit to playing that way on a consistent basis. So it just got to a point where Doug Armstrong felt like, you know, he had to pull the pin. As for Sheldon and the Maple Leafs, Treliving didn't just extend Sheldon because he felt like that was the right thing to do and needed to buy himself a little bit more time to get to know the individual. But when you've got a coach, the pedigree of Craig Berube out there and available, man, that gets a lot of owners talking about it. And now that we're past the quarter mark and certain teams are closing in on 30 games, and now we've seen some teams make their coaching changes early in the regular season, that too fuels the conversation, certainly among ownership and senior management. I don't see the fit in season in Toronto, but if things were to go poorly yet again for the Maple Leafs, then and who's to say that Craig Berube isn't going to take the time that he deserves to just reset? He's not going to jump at the first opportunity that comes his way unless it's a perfect fit. So if there's a space for him potentially going into next season, then I think we could have that conversation.
Yeah, certainly. And I think with Keefe, I think he's going to be judged on what he does in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah.
I think we're at a point where we've, they've sustained things a bit here in the regular season. They've made it to the Stanley Cup playoffs year after year after year. And I think he's going to be judged on that. Just before we leave you, is there anything on Nylander? Like, it's been so quiet on that front. I guess it's going to be one of those situations where it's going to pop out of nowhere, maybe, right?
Yeah, that makes the most sense because both the Toronto Maple Leafs and the agent Louis Gross are holding things tight to the vest here. And I get it. You know, it's a noisy market. We always want to talk about it because it's a sensational story to talk about. You know, I think Toronto was hoping that the player side would give up a little bit, and they haven't, nor should they. I mean, William Nylander deserves probably what he's going to get, which is $11 million or more per on an annual average salary. How do you argue with that? You don't like it if you're living in the Maple Leafs because that eats up all of the money that's coming the way of an increased cap for next year. But you know what? Put that in the category of good problems to have because this guy's an all-world player. But for the moment, it's all quiet there, Nick.
Dregs, very well said. Thank you so much for taking some time today, I should say, and happy holidays.
Yeah, same to you guys. I love the show.
Thanks,
Thank you
Dregs.
so much. Take care.
Appreciate you coming, man.
The one and only Darren Dreger, and so appreciative again of his time. Very, very busy, as you can hear his phone going off. There's lots happening in the NHL world. I thought that was a cheeky little question by you about Craig Berube. Like, Dregs is right. I mean, one swoon here where they lose 3 or 4 in a row again, and it's like all hell is breaking loose. But I think at the very least, like, and I'd be so curious to get like, you know, a breakdown behind the scenes, a fly in the wall vantage point of like, let's say a guy like Craig Berube becomes available, like the type of reaction that would get from like front offices around the league. Cause it is a copycat league. Like I often talk about, Rosie, the LA Kings, like all the hype about that team having Cam Talbot and Phoenix Copley as their tandem. And they've been incredible. And they copied that pretty much essentially from the Vegas Golden Knights, who won with Aiden Hill as their starting goaltender in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year. And then you look at Berube. I mean, 5 years ago, he wins the Stanley Cup with the Fact Daddy himself, 2019 with the St. Louis Blues. So at the very least, you're at least looking around, say, hey, you know what would that look like, you know?
For sure you would. I mean, like I said to Dregs there, that right now this morning, you know, things are pretty positive in Leafland, and you know, rightfully so. We talked about what a heater they're on right now, so that's great. But you know, it wasn't very long ago we were talking about, is Sheldon Keefe the the coach for this, and what has he done to remain here, and does his track record say that he's untouchable? And I don't think the answer is yes, he's untouchable. Why would it be? I mean, they've had some pretty consistent shortfallings in the playoffs, and is that all on Keefe? No, but if you have this core and you've committed to them, and we're seeing guys get extended, and it's going to be the group they're going to have moving forward, and a guy like Craig Berube with a winning pedigree recently becomes available, it's definitely something that could pique their interest, but just probably not today. And like you say, like Drake says, he's probably going to want to take some time to go reset, reevaluate, talk to the wife and family, and see what exactly it is that he needs to do. And, he's a solid guy who's got a good head on his shoulders. He coached me in Philly there. So I don't think he'll be pulling any triggers without thinking thoroughly about it.
You know what else I gained from that conversation? That the Leafs are going to have to be mighty creative between now and March 8th, the trade deadline. And that's why, again, it was just speculation, just spitballing on my part. That's why I threw out the name Eric Goodbranson. I think would be a good fit. Brett Pesce, I think, would be the king daddy, like topper, like the type of guy you want on your roster, but going to be obviously hard. Carolina's a really good team. We expect them to be, up in the standings in the Eastern Conference. Been hit or miss with that franchise so far to start this year. But he's a free agent, and as Dregs alluded to, he's nowhere close to an extension with that team. Shoots right. He'd be the perfect guy, but I think everything's got to be on deck for this team. And if that even means making a trade with another playoff team that's going to the playoffs, I think all hands on deck. And I think it was important that Dregs brought up the fact that if maybe they're looking for a combo deal, it's not going to be Tanev and Zadorov. Maybe it's something out of Philadelphia or San Jose. Like, I think you scour the league. But I think it's becoming clear that they're probably not adding just one, but they're going to try to add two defensemen here.
Yeah, I hope they do too. I want that back end to have a totally different look. And
it's been a great story, though, eh? It's been a great story. I mean, you look at Benoit and Lagesson and those types, like, have really stepped up here.
I'm liking McCabe lately too. He's got that. Just looking at the guy, it's just like, man, you could be a stud with like a leadership position, be that physical presence. And I mean, he's laying some huge hits lately, and instantly leads to a fight every single time that he's willing to do and can handle himself in just fine. And that's fantastic to see. And guys are stepping up, no question, but are they stepping up to a level where, this is what we need going into a deep run into the playoffs? I'm not so sure about that. I think they want to add some pieces, no question. And I think with Brad Tree living at the helm, he's not scared to get his hands dirty, to be creative, to be in on every talk and every deal and be working the phones constantly. I think he's a guy that is not scared to get in there. And I wouldn't be surprised if something really exciting happened coming down to the wire.
Laughing at the chat right now, everybody's asking who King Daddy is. It's a reference from Jeff O'Neill in Overdrive that I've just put into my vernacular because I think it's hilarious. He's like, yeah, it's King Daddy Topper. Like, that's what he says about everything. And I was looking for the words, and that just came to mind because I watched that show religiously. So apologies to everybody in the chat, even Tammy chiming in, who the fuck is King Daddy? I totally understand. But let's get to that McCabe hit, man. Like, the unique thing about Jake McCabe, I remember watching this guy play at the World Junior for the Americans and watching him early on in his career with the Buffalo Sabres. He was like more of like an offensive threat. But then the last little while, that hit against Nashville, he's done it a couple times previously earlier this year. He has that physical presence in him. And like, this is why Kyle Dubas went out last year and acquired this guy. And he's becoming very comfortable, it seems, being on that back end. Like, it took him a while to get him accustomed to everything in Toronto. He's more of a quieter guy. In fact, we asked him to come on this show. He humbly declined. It's one of those things where he's feeling better and better, and the confidence is growing and growing, and he's lighting guys up, man. Like, Ryan Lindgren is a rugged defenseman in his own right, and he was caught puck watching, and he got smoked under the bright lights of Madison Square Garden, and there was a fucking lineup to fight Jake McCabe, and it was more of like a hugging match, right? So I credit him. You need more of this play. I think he's the closest they have to a Jake Muzzin. I've said this time and time again. Is he Jake Muzzin? No, but I've been really impressed with McCabe lately.
Yeah, same here. He's stepping up, and it's what you need. And it does take a while to, acclimate to your surroundings and get used to things. And I don't know exactly, what kind of systems they're running and how detailed they are and how much they're running through the X's and O's where a guy's got to take some time, or maybe it's just, playing with different partners and adjusting to the different styles of play of those guys on the back end. But he's definitely stepped up in the last, I'd say few weeks, and it's good to see. And it's a pattern that I hope continues with not just him, but some other guys on the back end as well.
Yeah, again, this team has a resiliency to them, which I think is hilarious to say. But like when shit goes wrong and they lose guys, we saw this last November, they seem to rally.
They seem
Like
to
they've
rally
had every
more
reason to just pack. Yeah, like they could have
when they
easily
have
packed it in. You
adversity
got
is when they rally. It's freaking crazy, man. They go down to
yeah,
like Shalgren. They have Jonesy stepping up big time. You got, your PTO guy playing on your top line. They have, so many reasons to fold and to
yeah.
to break. But it's when things are looking good and you expect them to mop the floor with a team, they just fucking don't even show up. And then they go through all this adversity and they're smashing teams. It's very odd, no question about it. But I think there's worse problems to have than being a team who can step up to facing adversity.
Yeah, very unpredictable nature to this team. And I said this on yesterday's show. It could be a scheduled loss. It could be a Leafs beatdown. And it was a Leafs beatdown. Like I was like, I would not be shocked if the Leafs go in MSG and pump the wheels off the New York Rangers. And that's exactly what they did. And I also said it could be a scheduled loss where they just turn things in. We had a long night on Long Island, stuff like that. But they deserve a lot of credit, man. 11-7. They played tired, obviously, the second half of that game, and the big boys stepped up. It just shows you when those guys are humming, and we talked about this on yesterday's show. Auston Matthews has hit 8 posts. He has 21 goals and 8 posts. Like this guy legitimately could have 30 goals by now. It's crazy.
That number right now seems a little bit insane, but yeah, he's on pace. And I mean, and he goes through these, I don't want to call them dry periods, but there's a 3-game stretch where he doesn't really, get on the board too much, and he doesn't really seem to have that flair. And you're going, "Oh, what the hell's going on?" And it's not fair. It's not a realistic expectation for him to play like the best Auston Matthews every bloody night. I mean, things have to go your way too. There's other teams out there trying to prevent him from scoring. Let's not forget. But when he's hot, he is hotter than a pistol, man. And I mean, it's nice to see that he's got it going on. I would just, along with the team, like to see that consistency a little bit more. Not that I don't mind him getting 2-2 on certain nights, but you'd like to see or to feel like there wouldn't be that, say, first 3 games in a playoff series where Auston can't quite find it, because that's the end of your season, right? And you'd like to see him be able to channel that at will, and that's a big ask. But I mean, the way he's playing right now, when he is finding it, is next to none, no question.
They're getting contributions from everybody. Again, you look all of a sudden, they're 5-0-2, so it's a 7-game point streak. They have points in 11 of 12. And they're just getting point and point and point. And I think somebody mentioned in the standings, which we're about to look at, they're 4 points back of the Boston Bruins, right? Like,
yeah, how'd that happen?
I think they've been going about their business. It just makes no sense with the injuries in the back end. You lose your number 1 goalie, and they haven't skipped a beat. Sammy steps up large the other night. They get a point on the island. They find a way. They tie that game, and now you beat the New York Rangers. And suddenly you look 3 games without Joseph Woll. You're 2-0-1. You got to feel pretty happy about that. And again, we're going to talk about Thursday. You know what I'm going to say about the game against Columbus? I hope they show up. I hope they show up. We're going to talk about that on Thursday's show, but there's a lot to feel positive about this team right now. I'll go that far to say that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a nice place to be. And we expected them to have highs like this in the season. And I don't know if it is that adversity that makes them step up or wake up or realize they have to do it. And, when they're healthy and things are going well and they have a stinker, it's kind of like, well, shit, we kind of expected it to just go our way. And I hope they're growing from that and learning from it and moving away from it. But, if there's anything that you could say should be adverse situation, it's playing in a playoff series with a really good team, no matter who it is across the road, and they're going to be ready to rock and end your season. That's adversity to me. So I hope they can channel that in the playoffs. And we keep talking about that, but that's a little ways away. And we're creeping up on Christmas here, and they're chipping away, starting to put some pieces together, and it's looking pretty good.
It's a process. This segment is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece Program and an unbeatable pricing policy. Charm Diamond Centers is giving you a chance to win a $5,000 gift card. Become a Charmpion with the Propose. How would you propose? 1 knee, the bend, and snap. Tag at Charm Diamonds on Instagram in a post/story with a video or photo of your propose. Be sure to hashtag the propose to be entered. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. And we look now at the standings, and it's all jumbled up. Detroit's been up and down with Patrick Kane. They finally win their first game. But yeah, the Leafs gaining ground. The Panthers got blanked by Seattle on Tuesday. Good news all around that team in the standings. And then you look at Tampa. Hedman's banged up. They lose to Vancouver last night. The Leafs have games in hand. They got to feel pretty good about life right now.
Yeah, that happened quick. It was like,
I know.
did we do this last week? And it was a different look.
We do it every year, every week, Rosie, every Wednesday.
Oh, we do? No kidding. That's neat.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for letting me know. But they're 2 games in hand on Florida. That's fantastic. And, I think they can catch them easily. And I mean, it wasn't that long ago we're saying, well, Boston's like a runaway. So like, you might as well forget about them. And
I was saying that, yeah.
That's when things weren't going that fancy. But look at this right here. I mean, the sky's the limit. They can go anywhere. They could drop down again. I don't love to watch the standings, but it is good to check in once in a while and say, what's everyone doing out there? And, at a time like this, when you go on a little run like they have, pulling points out of so many games, and, they're winning in ways that you need to. Like, I can think of like 3 games in recent memory where they're scoring in like the last 10 seconds to tie the game. And, that guarantees you a crucial point. You do that a handful of times in the season. That separates you from guys below you. So, it's a good day to check in on the standings. That's for sure.
The big thing, I think that it is important with the standings, that I'm with you. It's mid-December, like whatever, but as the games in hand, and I think that's going to be vital. The Leafs have played 26 games, tied with the Boston Bruins. Other team like Tampa's played 30. The Leafs have 4 games in hand on Tampa, and Tampa's at 31 and Toronto's at 35. So 4-point gap, and they got 4 games in hand. Then you look at a team like Ottawa's played 23 times, but everybody around the Leafs, excluding Boston, of course, has played more games than them. Like even Florida's 1 point up, and they have 2 games in hand. The Leafs do on the Florida Panthers. So you can make substantial ground in the standings. And I think that is important to bring up as we move forward in this season. So you weren't with us yesterday. What did you make of 0.1000 for JT? Like anywhere you want to go with that. We talked about Paul Marner and his like skull reaction, and Joe Tavares beside him going wild. And it's a crazy night on Long Island where I thought it was a mixed bag for the Maple Leafs, but they get a point in that game. And you can't understate enough, like John Tavares, his worth, his meaning to this organization, this team. And you put it into context, like 98 people now have hit 1,000 points in their career. That's pretty elite company, isn't it?
Top 100 all time. That's incredible. And, I said the other day, 1,000 games is quite the accomplishment. 1,000 points is another level. And, to get 4 points in 2 games there, to do it on Long Island is impressive as well, especially when, heading into Long Island, everyone's saying, 2 points and you can do it, on Long Island. And I was just like, that's a pretty big ask, but he gets it done. And, good for him. What a great story. What a great memory. It's one of those things where you'll be like, tell your grandkids or have a picture of it with all the boys jumping onto the bench, and the jubilation on his face was pretty obvious. So special night for him personally, which is always fun to see. And with Marner's dad, honestly, man, I read on Twitter, and I think I kind of would like to maybe believe this too, but I think he's watched a lot of hockey, that man, right?
Oh.
He is a hocky dad.
You don't think Tavares' dad's watched a lot of hockey or lacrosse or both? Come on,
well, they're different personalities, obviously, but I think Marner's dad might have thought that it might be coming back. There's a bunch of guys in the crease bumping and jamming. I think he could just be waiting to see, and he's not a jump up and scream and yell guy, but I don't know, man. Maybe he's just extremely selfish and wasn't happy for Mr. Tavares or his son.
I just think it was a sheer coincidence that Mitch Marner wasn't in that goal. He didn't pick up a point. But maybe you're right. Again, you have to put things into context. Maybe it was just the way the shot. Maybe his reaction.
Dad alert, maybe psycho.
Maybe, dude, you've read up on this guy, right?
Well, a little bit. I know there's a history and
there's a history.
On. Yeah.
People think the Nylander negotiation is a lot of fun. Just wait until the Marner one. Wait until that one.
Dad's the agent. Hey, they love that.
There's a lot of stories I can tell you off air about that whole situation. But the dad ship I thought was really cool. Like I thought that's so awesome. Imagine your kid in the NHL like 30 years from now. He hits 1,000 points and you're able to be in the building where it all started for the guy. I know it didn't start at Belmont, but it started at the Coliseum for JT. Like, I mean, how do you not get emotional? How do you not celebrate that way? Like, I thought that was so cool. And I think the NHL has nailed this with the parents getting them involved, because without them, there's no you, right? And actually making the National League and the amount of sacrifice they put into it early on in your life, right?
It is literally the wickedest thing going is that dad's trip and the mother's trip to a degree as well. it's just so cool. And to be part of it is just, yeah, I can't overstate it enough. When you go through your routine and you're like, from the time you're young, you're leaving home and you're doing the thing, and you're in the locker room and on the bus and on the plane and in the hotels and getting ready for games. And it's just kind of like, it's just secondhand knowledge is all they know of it. They're never there. They don't see it. And for years and years and years and years, you just kind of tell them about it and you talk to them on the phone while you're doing it. And they're super supportive and they're super around, but they're not actually doing it with you. And then to be in the National Hockey League and to have those dads, I mean, they're fired up. They become kids again, right? They're meeting other dads and they got a drink in their hand and they're wearing their kids' jersey and they're prouder than hell. And they get to go to these unbelievable dinners and go on these private jets, and they stay in the Ritz-Carlton and they get VIP treatment throughout the buildings that you play in. And they're there with you, and it's just, everything about it is just friggin' awesome. And I'm so glad they do it. And every year when it happens, I love to watch and catch the little highlights and remember how special that was to do.
Man, some of the videos of Matthews' dad and Ty Domi are just incredible. Like, there's no way in hell like Ty didn't grab all these guys, all the dads, and be like, we're going out tonight. Like Ty Domi, we talked about this earlier in the year. This guy's attached to everything. He's got an in everywhere. He's friends with everybody. There's no doubt in my mind. Like they were having so much fun. Like I thought it was so cool to see. And then you see your kids put on a performance like that. Like this isn't Timbits hockey. This is the National League. You go to MSG, you see some of the star-studded talent that was on display in the crowd. Like Anthony Rizzo, Aaron Judge were there last night. Like I don't know how you don't get up for games. And that's why I think the Rangers are so good, because you get up for every home game. How do you not with people like that in the building? And to put that type of performance together, I thought was really, really cool. And seeing some of the reactions from the fathers, Paul Marner aside, of course, but Ty Domi was just having a great time. Matthews is old man, and it just seems like a really, really fun time. So great to see. I was going to ask you too, did you ever take part in any of the Maple Leaf skills competitions that they put on like once a year? Never did it, eh? Because so we've been hyping up All-Star Weekend coming to town early February, and again, the Nation Network's going to have a prolific stage there. And we're going to do some stuff, and we're going to do some podcasting and stuff like that. At least Morning Take in Toronto. But the NHL announcing its format for the skills competition, and you being a player, I'd love to get your sort of opinion on the tinkering. The big thing I drew from this is that the player with most points will win $1 million. Do you think that'll entice guys to actually try in this skills competition? A schmill.
I think they'll be trying harder. They won't try to show that they are, but that's certainly, it would just be fun to get guys that aren't already making $12 million a year involved in
Get Noah Gregor there.
Seriously, in the skating portion again, like third line guys. But regardless, I like the overhaul. Anything that makes it so we don't have to see them come out with a bloody cowboy hat and clown glasses on I'm on board for. I hate the sideshow shit where they're just pathetically trying to make something entertaining, basically reducing themselves to clowns is tough to watch. And if you do something that's a little bit more serious, some people will say, like, these guys need more money. I don't give a shit. I want a reason for them to do their best, try their hardest, take it seriously, and for someone to give a rip about it. You get in with all the sports betting and stuff going on, you can start getting involved with who's going to win it, and they're not going to be dicking around. Exactly. Who cares? Let me just do a silly one here. Like, no, they're going to be doing it for real, trying hard, and you can maybe get in on watching it with some purpose and have some excitement for it that way. That's a lot more exciting than having silly clown shoes on or some bullshit they've done in the past.
Oh, trust me, I've been to a bunch of All-Star weekends, and I'm in good taste. I'm gunned by the first event. Like, I just have a couple drinks, and that's my night, and I walk around the concourse. I might actually have to sit down this year at Scotiabank Arena and check out some of the action. I think the other thing I drew, too, was that only 12 players are going to compete in 8 events, right? So there's going to be like a drawing down of this. I think you're going to have to compete a bit more, and we'll see if it works. I mean, it's still a skills competition. It's still All-Star Weekend. A lot of these guys are in the bag. They're having fun. This is least of their concerns and worries, but I do think it needed a bit of freshening up, I should say. So we'll see if that entices some guys. I'm very intrigued by the player draft and all that, but at least the NHL hears and they know that a change was needed because it had become stale. I tend to agree with you.
Yeah, for sure. And we look forward to it this year. I think it'll be an extra big show in Toronto and kind of the hub of hockey, and we'll be there to watch. So looking forward to it.
We should have our own skills competition where we play flip cup, beer pong, and really show what we can do out there.
Maybe we will.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get the Jets on you and see all this beer league talk, see it in person.
Oh, I'm terrible. And behind the scenes, Rosie and I have been talking about heading out to Jasper for a pond hockey tournament in late January. We might have a Leafs Nation team put together, and that could be the first time you and I actually hit the ice together.
Yeah, so I can just imagine the chemistry that would be flowing.
I'm scared you're going to get rocked, and I'm going to have to step in for you. So
I did have a tough outing last time I was on my Jets. So yeah, as long as there's no college girls playing, I think I'll be safe.
we were actually talking about that at my beer league game, getting ready the other day, about you getting rocked at that charity game. I'm like, don't worry. He said something to her after.
I know. And then she challenged me too. She's kind of scary. So I just stayed away. I got to wipe the dust off before I step up to that level.
Yeah, fair enough. But just know right now, if somebody does get to you in on the pond, if we do go there, I will address the situation for you because teammates stick together.
Well, that's good to hear. I was going to say my gloves will be spring loaded on the pond because I'm not going to get embarrassed twice in 1 year.
For me, it'll be more of like a Mika Zibanejad. And you know what? I respect that more than what the Leafs tend to do, where they run away. He hugged them. It was like maybe a half shot, and that's it. The refs come in because the refs know their jobs. You're Mika Zibanejad. But do you think it's more about the player just showing, hey, I'm backing my teammate, is what guys care about? Like, you would know better than me. You're in the
100%.
room. Do guys even care about that?
No, 100%. No one expects Mika Zibanejad to come up and fucking shit pump this guy and switch hands and start stringing out and throwing uppies and jersey jabs. Like, are you kidding me? Just, you see something on the ice. Are you kidding me? You jump in there and whatever the hell happens after that's kind of irrelevant. You'd like not to get your, face pumped, but the only thing that really matters, 90% of it is that a guy jumps in there and shows up. And especially when it's one of your stars, one of your offensive guys that doesn't do that, doesn't feel comfortable doing it, it's even that more meaningful. And you'll go give the guy a tap on the pads after that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I love that type of gamesmanship and camaraderie, and great on Mika Zibanejad for stepping in. Maybe the Leafs can learn, and they have been stepping up the last month or so. So it's great to see. Speaking of stepping up, our friends over at Covered Bridge, Rosie, are in a giving mood, I should say, this holiday season. Over the next 10 days or so, they'll be giving away 3 prize packs, and it's pretty easy to be eligible to win, by the way, which is great. All you got to do is follow Covered Bridge on Twitter, AKX at CB Chips, and Instagram at CB_Chips. Plus, like and tag 2 of your friends in their promotional posts about this giveaway for a chance to win an 8-pack of Storm Chips, which are phenomenal, which Rosie talked about a month ago, about just mucking in bed and your wife getting pissed off because the crumbs are going all over. But the Storm Chips are great, and 1 branded plaid fleece. So our friends at Covered Bridge, they're acting like Santa Claus here. I love it. That
is nice, man. I still got some of the goodie bag left. I have been putting a heavy dent in it, more than I should be, but man, it's funny. My sister too. I was telling her about them sponsoring us, and she goes, "Me and my girlfriend used to walk around looking for salt and vinegar Covered Bridge potato chips. They're their best in the world." And I was like, "No shit!" So I had to make sure I dropped some off and put a little dent in my stash again. But maybe we'll nudge them for another shipment.
Yeah, we should. We definitely should. Those all dress, man. Like, I'm not an all dress guy, but those all dress ones are fantastic. By the way, these are the last 2 bags left. Like, they sent us a shit ton of Covered Bridge. And mind you, I think the whole point of that was to get the word out, which I did. Brought it to my gym, gave it to some of the staff of my condo building, gave it to my parents, some family, some friends. But yeah, I got 2 bags left, man.
You've been mocking. Well, you better save them for the set, boy. You're done. Better go buy some now.
Well, that's the thing. They're gonna stay on that set because we hope to be with Covered Bridge for life. So it's great to see, and maybe we get some more chips so I can eat these ones. But they're phenomenal. So make sure you get locked and loaded on that front. Meantime, brought to you by Betano, the 2023 EGR winner for both the Best Sportsbook Operator of the Year and Best In-Play Sports Operator Awards. The game starts now. I like the over between Buffalo and Colorado tonight. Dude, I have been on fire. I called the Matthews goal last night. I think I'm 5, 6, 7 in a row here. So I'm really feeling Buffalo, Colorado in the over. I don't feel great about those 2 defenses. Some guys are banged up, and I think we're going to see some offense tonight in Denver at Ball Arena.
I love it, man. If you're hotter than a pistol, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to tail you and reap the rewards.
I love how I say that now, and I'm going to come on the show tomorrow and be like, well, I lost. But
Well, I lost
nevertheless, this has been a lot of fun. I guess you're at the studio getting set to film a bit more here with Hockey Fights.
We are. We're doing our Department of Discipline today. Should be out tomorrow, maybe Friday. But yeah, I got to roll, man. There's more to do under this Nation Network umbrella.
You do. You've got an elevating role. You're like a Noah Gregor. You started on the fourth line. Now you're getting first line minutes, right?
Just cranking it off a PTO, baby.
Love that. You did get a PTO, actually. And I'm very intrigued to check out that episode because lots has happened. I'm sure you're going to be covering some cross checks and shit like that.
Yeah, there'll be a couple Department of Player Safety checkouts that I'm sure they're busy with. So we'll go over them in what?
Dude,
detail.
Watching Eric Goodbranson, I just felt great about life. Just your boy Nicky Cousins got fucking fed, man. Fuck around, you find out. I'm sorry. Maybe it's the old school in me, the traditionalist in me, but fuck around and you find out. And that's exactly what happened. I'm sorry. And then your boy turtled. He turtled.
Oh yeah, he would too. I like Nick. He's an absolute beauty, but he's a rat. And I don't know. He didn't think he did wrong there. And
you got
you can go
killed.
Watch DOD. We'll break it down.
Got absolutely dumb it. Okay, that's a nice tease. Well done. So Rosie, we back in the mix on Thursday. They got the Columbus Blue Jackets at Scotiabank Arena, but you're going to have to watch that game to find out which Maple Leafs team shows up, okay?
Yeah, sounds good. I hope they're on a roll and they've fixed their problems of the past. We'll wait and see, buddy.
We'll never know until we find out. So that's coming up on Thursday, a thorough preview of the Leafs and the Blue Jackets. Thanks, everybody in the chat. You guys are fantastic, and I love all of you encouraging everybody to hit that like button. That really helps us out, so do that. Subscribe at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Search Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast as well. Help us out there. Leave us a review, like, whatever helps this bitch grow. You guys love that as I say that, and we're going to coin that, grow this bitch. Hashtag it. Love it. Many thanks to Darren Dreger, and of course, that's Jay Rosehill. I'm Nick Alberga. Produce Aaron as well. Bang up job, and we're feeling good about life heading into Thursday's Leafs Morning Take, so we'll talk then.
Thank you for watching Leafs Morning Take. Hit that subscribe button and never miss a show. And for more, visit theleafsnation.com. TheLeafsNation.com. If you don't know how to spell the Leafs Nation, you know what I mean? But hey, sometimes you never know.